Welcome to the Parkland Report. I'm Stephanie Stewart, Vice President for Communications and External Affairs here at Parkland College and your host of the Parkland Report, where we talk to the people making things happen here at the college. Today, we're talking all about the Parkland Science Scholars. We're joined by Britt Carlson and Janae Sparks, and we'll learn more about the program. So welcome for both of you to the show.
Hi. Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
So could you introduce yourselves and maybe your roles and just a little bit about your backgrounds before we dig into the subject of the day, which you guys are matching for?
Yes.
Do you want to go first, Britt?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Britt Carlson. I'm an associate professor of chemistry here at Parkland, and I am both the program coordinator and the main administrator of Parkland Science Scholars. So that's me.
Great. Welcome to the show.
Yeah.
I'm Janae. I'm a sophomore at Parkland. I am a student at the Science Scholar Program. I am majoring in atmospheric sciences and aerospace. So, yeah.
Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So Britt, you're the program coordinator for Parkland Science Scholars. So can you tell me maybe what the project is or what the program is, and maybe a little bit about how it's funded? Because I know there's a story there.
There is a story. So we are funded by the National Science Foundation through a program called STEM, which is scholarships in science, technology, engineering, and math. It's this amazing national program, but the funding is pretty tight, so you often don't get it the first time. So the grants team and I were very dedicated to this idea of supporting students from low-income families as they pursue their degrees in sciences. And we actually applied and wrote the proposals, applied for funding 4 years in a row.
Wow.
And then we finally got it, and it was party time. We're so excited, yeah. So they're hard to get, these grants, but they can be transformative to the students. So the Science Scholars just started their first year this past fall, and will be able to support 4 cohorts of 10 science students. And each cohort we host for 2 years. It's a 2-year program. During the course of the program, the students receive a financial scholarship, which covers most of their costs for attending Parkland. They also are matched with a faculty mentor, one-on-one mentoring. They also connect with a graduate student mentor from the University of Illinois, and then the second years will become mentors for the first year participants. We form a community within a course, which also teaches the students about success as being a science student, but also professionalism and careers in STEM. Mm-hmm. We also talk about adjacent issues like mental health and imposter syndrome and feeling confident about becoming a scientist, and ethics and all those other sorts of topics. And then during the summer between the first and second years, the students all participate in an undergraduate research experience.
Wow.
So we kind of set the students up and prepare them for applying for paid research experiences, but we also have part-time research experiences for credit in collaboration with the university.
That's amazing. And I'll put a pin in the research piece because I want to dig more into that. But Janae, so hearing about the program, what drew you into that and wanting to apply for the program?
So when I came to Parkland as a freshman, it was right in the middle of COVID. Nobody was here. I was taking a bunch of science courses, actually meteorology at the time, but I still had to come to lab. It had to be an in-person lab. So I showed up and I was the only one walking in the hallway. I was actually the only person in lab. So I kept going, I stuck it out, and I was like, but I knew I wanted to do science, I just didn't know where I was. So my first year, I took almost every single intro course to any kind of science you could. I took biology, psychology, all these different things. Yeah. And I found myself in love with meteorology and like what it had to offer. And actually, I got an email about the Science Scholars, and I was like, I fit that, why not? And like the scholarship money that you get was like a no-brainer for me because I'm out of district. So I was paying extra, and that was like a huge help for me. Mm-hmm. So that kind of drew me in, and then after that I fell in love with what we did. Like the people that I have in class are like some of the best friends I've ever had.
That's great. So you found kind of your small community of people that are interested in the same things
Right.
that you are.
Yeah, and I was a sophomore before I knew that there was more than one student at Parkland because I was the only one here. So,
I think
Yeah.
your experience is probably not unlike a lot of other students who
Right.
started college or graduated high school and were thinking about what to do next during kind of the COVID
Right.
COVID 2 years, if
Yeah.
you think about it that way. So
Yeah.
that's wonderful. So I mentioned the research, you mentioned the research, and I wanted to learn more about that. So tell me about some of the different research opportunities, because before we started, we were talking a little bit about all the possibilities there. So where and what are the research possibilities as part of the program?
Yeah, so undergraduate research experiences can be transformative for students. So a lot of times we have to slog through a lot of introductory courses before we get to do the really cool stuff. So this is a way to get students to have relevant work experience and also kind of get that curtain drawn back of what can you do in science, because a lot of us grew up in families that were not scientist families, right? And you think of scientists as sitting by themselves with a bunch of bottles, right? And maybe that's some science, but that's not all science. But what does it look like, and what are the jobs, and also making that link between your classes and what you might actually do with that. So the paid research experiences, these are typically funded by federal agencies like the National Science Foundation or Department of Energy and so on. They're available all over the country. And students would get matched up with a lab and get mentored. So lots of support in the beginning when you kind of come in and you don't really know what you're doing. But as you learn, you gain more independence throughout. And they get paid pretty competitively, very good stipend, so that students can actually afford to not take that summer job that they need to get them through that year, but can really take these positions. But they're super competitive. So I think some of the acceptance rates that I've heard of are in the single digits, like 4% of the applicants are actually offered a position. So we work with the students to develop a strong personal statement and resume and basically a portfolio that they can submit. But we anticipate that it might not be the best match for everyone. Not everybody can move to the Rocky Mountains and do awesome environmental research. Some people have families or connections that they really need to stay local. So our other option is a part-time research experience for Parkland Credit, where I connect students with a University of Illinois research faculty, and the students will do research part-time in that way. So it's maybe a smaller experience, but it still is getting them into the labs and doing real science, as opposed to the experiences we try to emulate here at Parkland are great and they're learning experiences, but we're pretty much hoping that we know how they work, right? Whereas the authentic research that you would do in these summer experiences are asking questions that nobody knows the answers to yet, and you're not sure. You have some hypotheses maybe, but you really don't know what's going to happen, which is the most exciting part of doing science, is going into that unknown and making those discoveries.
That's great. And Janae, I know you're looking at a number of opportunities, and you don't have to disclose all the locations necessarily, but you're looking at your research opportunities and are in the process of applying. So tell me what that's been like for you. Did you know that you could even apply to these research opportunities before you were part of the program? That's one thing that kind of blows my mind, is like you've just opened a huge door of students even knowing that they could do that. But what's the process been?
I didn't know that there were research opportunities. I just thought, you go to a university and super cool things happen at a big university. So I didn't know that they were a thing. I spent my first semester in the program just working on basically describing myself, who I was, where I came from, what led me to the Science Scholar Program. We spent a whole semester doing that, and I read a bunch and I revised it, and then I had this folder that was my life. My college life was in a folder. And I went on this, there's a Pathways program where it just gives you a list. You search and you search. I'm doing meteorology. I even applied to some that weren't really what I wanted to do, but it was an opportunity that I didn't want to turn away. I applied to 15 of them. And like Britt said, the acceptance rate isn't very high, so I'm not expecting to get one, but you also have to understand there's thousands of other people also applying. So I applied, and then you just kind of sit back and wait. But it's nice to know that the program set me up to I can go to the U of I. Even if I don't get a super cool going across the ocean all summer, I can go to the U of I and still study something close.
Yeah, it's really convenient to have a world-class university just in our backyard. But it sounds like it's been just a really good process even to just get your materials together to apply, and the kind of like courage that it takes to say, I'm putting myself out there, and then the things and opportunities that can come from that process.
We also got to go kind of around Parkland and see what they offer, like a presentation center. We went to the writing lab. We got to visit almost the entire place, so I didn't even know that those were a thing until I went to the program, and I think that helped a lot, kind of knowing that people were here to help. And I visited 12, 15 different people to reread my life in a book. So it was nice to have that kind of open edge source.
That's great.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate what Janae said, that a lot of what we've put into the course is maximizing all the resources that we have here at Parkland. So making students aware, but also forcing them to go. So Parkland has an amazing team of people. So all of the students took their personal statements to the writing center. They all met with our career counselor to talk about how do you write a resume. We also went to the presentation center. They had to tour the Learning Commons to learn about the tutoring services. So it has been a great way for me to make more connections outside of the sciences, but also to get the students to start seeing that they really have all these supports here at Parkland.
Yeah, it's great to hear that too, because I think that's a model that we could use even in other disciplines, but to help students learn about all of the different resources and being really intentional about making those connections.
Right.
And I think a lot of students find those types of supports and that more intimate environment in a community college. So from your perspective, Britt, why is it so important for community college students to have these types of opportunities? Because just as Janae said, I think if you go to a university, all the doors open, but doors open from this perspective too. So share a little bit about that.
Right, yeah, so these paid undergraduate research experiences have been around, I would say I'm guessing maybe around 30 years or so. I think the National Science Foundation is the first one who started formalizing them. And they were traditionally geared towards your upperclassmen students, so thinking about getting them ready for graduate school. But more and more research has come out showing that early interventions, early stage research experiences have much more impact, right? So if you think about it, those juniors and seniors, they've already made it through all of those tough introductory courses, and they're going to be successful. If they made it that far, they're going to be successful, and it's great to give them extra supports. But it's those students in the beginning. We have many more students who start college indicating an interest in the STEM fields, the science, technology, engineering, than we have graduating in those fields. And it's because we lose them along the way, right? And if we could get them connected to what does this really look like outside of the classroom? What do I actually do with this? You get excited about the doing of science. You're going to be able to make more connections to what we're doing in class and stick with it. So it's a huge retention tool for students. So the early stage is now becoming more and more of a focus for these programs. And then about two-year college students in particular, most community colleges like Parkland have very little or no research experiences available on site. So then it can be very difficult for students to get their foot in the door. Once you transfer, those faculty might be excited to have you, but they might also say, well, I'm going to have to do a lot of training, I'm not sure who you are, and you're here for maybe 2 more years, right? So they're taking a risk by taking a brand new student who just transferred in. Whereas if you can say, look, I have already done this, I've shown that I've been successful, I have these letters of references from other researchers, I know that I want to do this. And they're going to say, great, let me make this an opportunity for you, right? So it really helps you get your foot in the door once you transfer to get those research experiences. Because although U of I and other large research universities have these experiences available for undergraduates, we still have the same setup that there's more interest than there are opportunities. So being able to demonstrate your interest and your success can really help you once you transfer as well. And get a job afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Saying that you have been able to do this.
Yeah, probably makes you so much more marketable just down the line. Just to look at how early on you started those research opportunities. What are some examples of the types of research, let's say at the University of Illinois, that you've been able to pair students with real research in action? What are the types of projects?
They are everything. Basically, you think of it and they're researching it at the university. So I can say from my other program that I run, which is a biology research experience, that's a collaboration between Parkland and University of Illinois. We have had students looking at the parental behavior of frogs, or how neurons change in response to stress, or if we could emulate what the atmosphere will look like in 50 years, high carbon dioxide and high ozone levels. How does that impact the growth and productivity of our crops, like soy and corn? So there's all sorts of those things, and then there's physics, there's engineering, there's atmospheric sciences, it's basically everything. And the students are in there doing it, and they have their projects and they have their ownership. And what we just mentioned, jobs, some of the students who have participated in those programs actually stayed local, and those labs were so impressed with the work that our community college students have done that they've offered them paid lab positions and have stayed on, whether it's measuring fish or growing up more fungi or looking at worms all day.
This is what your summer might look like.
Yeah.
Any one of those things, any part of the country, right?
Yeah. She brought up the atmospheric sciences part, and that excites me enough that I would apply to that. So it's not, you don't have to be dead set, I don't want to look at worms all day. That's not something I'm interested in. But then talking about the ozone layer, the carbon dioxide, bringing in even a chemistry coming into that, a little chemistry, that excites me enough to, I would apply for that. And that doesn't sound like something I'd want to do every day, but that's something I would want to study for 6 to 12 weeks. And then bringing up low income, very minimal opportunities. The school that I came from, there were 30 of us that graduated. I didn't see, Bio 2 was the highest, and we had anatomy, and that was you're pushing it to get anatomy. There's 4 of us in anatomy in my class, so I didn't get all these cool opportunities that bigger high schools would have. So then when I came to Parkland and I applied to all these, I didn't have much credentials, right? I didn't study very much. I had the intro, and that was it. Parkland only has intro in meteorology. I applied with an intro, but they want that. They don't want me to have everything figured out, which I think was a lot of comfort for me. So I think that's a big aspect that people forget. They don't want somebody that has a doctorate degree studying with them anymore. They want you that doesn't know what you want to do, and you don't have all of that in the back of your pocket. So I think people have to remember that they're just like you applying too.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point, and I should have mentioned it before, that one of the main purposes of these programs and of Parkland Science Scholars is to broaden participation in the sciences and engineering. So we know that it tends to be a certain set of the population, a lot of people who have long history of educational background, come from middle class or higher, a lot of voices are not represented in science. And those are the people who are asking the questions, right? We want to have all the voices who are asking the questions and making those discoveries that I talked about. So we want students who come from low-income families, or who are first-generation college students, or come from a racial or ethnic minority group. We want to have more voices included. And I think that this is a great way to say, hey, you haven't had these opportunities, let's get you set up so that you can start your path. Yeah.
That's great. It sounds like this program really, there is a demand for that too. So Jenna, you've said, hey, this is an opportunity and I'm interested, and I'm going to kind of step up to the plate and put myself out there and be part of it, and it sounds like you're making the most of it.
Yeah, a lot of it I was scared at first. I was they don't want me. I don't know anything. I was just I know the very the minimum. That's it. I don't have the 3, 4, 5 that you want of the same course. So that was a lot, and I think like Britt said, you lose interest in science when you can't do it. Nobody wants to sit and listen to a 3-hour lecture about these super cool like explosions that you can make, and like, but doing it is like, lab is so much more fun. You get to put your hands on stuff and you get to measure things, and that's so much more interesting, and I think that kind of catches your eye a little more than like listening to them talk about these super cool things that you can do in a lab. So, and then with the Parkland Scholars, we actually got to go to the U of I and watch them run their lab, and they talked to us about what they did in their chem labs, and I got to see a oxygen-free lab. Like, I didn't know that that was a thing, and they wore these big, super cool, like, astronaut gloves to work with their little projects. It was super cool, way over my head, but like,
so the whole room
cool.
was oxygen-free, or just a small
These like
space within
boxes were oxygen-free, and then they had these like little ports, and they'd put like whatever instrument or whatever they needed in there, and like would keep reducing the oxygen level. And it was really cool to like see them work like that in these big gloves, and something I would love to touch just because, but you don't get that in everyday like STEM classes. So your math class will pay off when you get to play with the super cool science stuff at the end.
Keep that in the back of your mind as you're, finishing your homework assignment.
Like I get to mess with these really cool gloves at the end. Like just one more trig problem, one more calculus problem. So I think that's a big like motivator too. Like we get to see super cool things, and like we get to go see like soy next week, and like that doesn't, like farming doesn't interest me, but to go see it happen is way cooler than hearing about it, and that sparks my interest enough that there might be a little atmospheric science involved that sparks me enough. Yeah. It's supposed to rain, so that's enough for me to like I'll show up. So I think that's a really big, we have all kinds of things. I've learned about so much physics lately that like now at this point like it excites me to hear about it. So it's not just for one set type of science, it's for everybody.
Yeah, Janae is mentioning we connected, or the Younger Chemists Committee, which is a graduate student organization at the University of Illinois, hosted all of the scholars for a research shadowing day. So they connected with a couple of grad students and got to go into their lab and see that glove box, oxygen-free environment, and they had lunch with their mentors. And I know afterwards some of the students were like, well, I stayed late because they were going to show us the laser. And I really want to see the laser. It was like a whole room size laser. So yeah, it's really exciting for me to see you guys get so excited about all the different things we're doing. And right now we're doing a journal club. So students are interacting with primary research articles, which are dense.
Yeah.
But it's really cool to see you diving in, like really getting to start on those careers that you're headed towards. So, yeah.
And like you don't have to know everything, right? Like we do these journal clubs, and like most of us don't know what half of these papers are talking about. But you kind of step back and then you simplify what you do know, and then you're teaching 3-4 of us things that we had no clue about. I learned for 50 minutes about quantum theory today, and like I didn't way beyond where I want to be. So, but that like it's exciting to me to be able to like now I can go back and reiterate what I learned, and I think that kind of broadens the STEM aspect. Now when I go into a different class, I have a little bit of knowledge. I threw a little astronomy in today's lecture actually, so like there's room for everybody. It's not just one type. So I think that's also really comforts you a lot in the Science Scholars Program.
So Janae, when you finish the Science Scholars Program and you finish up your associates at Parkland, what are your next academic steps, or what are your goals?
I'm going to apply to the U of I. I want to get my bachelor's in atmospheric sciences. I want to study climatology and aerospace. I want to double major in those. Realistically, I want to work for NASA. I do want to study like global warming, climate change aspects, but I'd love to like work with rockets. Like that is really exciting. I don't want to go to space. I have no interest, but working with somebody that wants to go to space would be something I'd love to do every day.
That's amazing. You're taking all of the right next steps, so I'm very excited. Please stay in touch with all of us once you do all of those things.
Yeah.
We want to watch you, pursue that career path, because you're doing an amazing job.
Yeah.
Britt, is there anything I didn't ask you about that our viewers should know about Parkland Science Scholars or the work that you guys are doing?
Yeah, so right now applications are open for fall. So you can just go to our website, which is parkland.edu/Parkland Science Scholars. And we try to keep the application pretty short so that it's not a barrier to students, but we would love more applications. As Janae said, it's all science majors, so jump on and try it out, and we would love to have more faces for fall. And anybody with any questions can always just shoot me an email, and whether you want to talk to me or I can connect you with one of our current scholars if you want to know about their experiences. But we're just really excited to have this opportunity to support more scientists on their journey. Yes.
That's wonderful. And so this fall will be the second cohort?
Yes.
And so you get to do 4 total with your grant, right? So 4 years in a row. That's amazing.
Yeah. So Janae is actually, and the rest of them are working on training right now to become mentors for that incoming group, which is kind of an exciting next step. Like, you'll get to be the experts in a way, right?
Yeah. I'm super excited to be a mentor, actually. I've learned a lot about like people and how to like how to connect with people and not kind of vomit that like I know everything and you know nothing, so you come to me and I'll tell you everything. I hope a lot of people apply. I want to see a lot more faces, and I want to learn about what other science field there is that I haven't heard of. But there's one of every kind in there. Like, none of us have the same major. So like, we have 4 physics majors, but they're all different types of physics. So I mean, it's not like apply and you can come hang out with us every Thursday. We do super cool stuff, I'm not gonna lie, and we always have free food, so it works out.
I think we're going to end on that note. There's no greater sales pitch than great mentors, and we've always got free food and you can hang out. Well, thank you both so much for being on the show. This has been really informative for me, and I'm sure for our viewers. So thank you again. And that's it for this episode of the Parkland Report. We hope you learned something new, learned about the Parkland Science Scholars, and we'll see you next time.
Parkland Science Scholars is a comprehensive program designed to support low-income science majors at Parkland College. Parkland Science Scholars is supported by a grant from the National Science Foundation and can support 10 students a year for a total of 40 students. Parkland Science Scholars includes multiple benefits for participants. These include a scholarship of $2,450 each semester for 4 semesters. In addition, students take a 1-credit course each semester where they build community and learn about science careers and professionalism. All students participate in summer research where they gain experience and professional connections in their future career area. In addition to these benefits, participants engage in several mentoring relationships. Each student is paired with a faculty mentor from Parkland's Natural Sciences Department. In addition, second-year participants mentor first-year participants. Lastly, participants connect with graduate students from the University of Illinois and form mentoring relationships with them. Students also engage with Parkland student clubs and become leaders in those groups. Participants must maintain good academic standing throughout the full 4 semesters of the program, and those who successfully complete the program will receive recognition from the Parkland Board of Trustees. Parkland Science Scholars presents an exciting opportunity for students pursuing science majors and is designed to holistically support these students along their academic and professional journeys.